Let's get started with this first story. I'm going to start here, actually, and not necessarily jump in with the violent photos, but this is part of the same story. White House refuses to condemn activist group who posted home addresses of Supreme Court justices. We have another story out of Maryland and Portland, and there are these pregnancy centers where activists went and smashed up the windows and damaged them, ransacked them. These are places where they try and talk to women who are pregnant. They're called crisis pregnancy centers. Well, activists who are associated with the pro-abortion side of things, I guess, just hate them. And so they went and vandalized and tagged them up. I think seeing stuff like this reach the highest levels, like the White House, where we learned that Supreme Court justices had their addresses posted. We've already seen people lose their lives. It shows that we're reaching this very extreme level of hyperpolarization. So, Daryl, I don't know if you've been following any of the current news about the Roe v. Wade stuff. I mean, things have been kind of crazy over the past couple of years, or, Bill, if you've been following this stuff. But I think we just get started with this, the modern hyperpolarization, and I'm curious what your thoughts are with, far left, as they would call it, or far right, people fighting in the streets. Or how about just this right here, pro-abortion groups smashing up windows and vandalizing buildings?
Well, that's been going on for quite some time. About probably 30 years ago, there was an anti-abortion person who was going up and down the East Coast bombing abortion clinics. And he got arrested, I think, down in Florida. Another one murdered an abortion doctor in Florida, Dr. Gunn. The guy who bombed the clinics lived right in Maryland. And I remember I was in bed one night at my girlfriend's house, and there was thunder and lightning, and she lived right up against the woods. And we thought a tree had been hit by lightning because the whole ground rocked, things fell off the walls, everything, 4 o'clock in the morning. And we jumped up out of bed, and then, still thunder and lightning and raining outside. So at 7:30 that morning, things had died down. We came outside. All the neighbors were out. We're all looking in the woods for this fallen tree. And this was on a Sunday morning, about 4 a.m. It wasn't discovered until Monday in Annapolis, Maryland, that that guy had bombed the abortion clinic on the other side of the woods.
Wow.
How far away from your house was it?
From her house. It was, less than a quarter mile.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It feels like there are political issues that are kind of impossible in a sense. Like when we talk with people who are pro-life, because we have, Seamus on the show periodically, and we have a lot of conservatives, and they're staunchly pro-life. Their view of this is, for one, most reasonable people, most people, and particularly like all reasonable people, think bombing an abortion clinic is wrong and killing people is wrong. But you have moral questions that arise. If the pro-life side genuinely believes that babies are being murdered, then they're trying to stop murder. Now, how do you solve for a problem like that if you can't convince someone that it's wrong to bomb a clinic? You know what I mean? Like if they believe in their heart of hearts that they're saving babies, I don't know if you can convince them not to commit these acts.
Well, I think that if they're convinced that you're murdering babies, and perhaps they're separating babies from adults. So in their minds, I'm not agreeing with them, I'm saying, but in their minds, they're murdering the people who are murdering babies.
Right.
So therefore, they're preventing the murder of babies.
Or of just destroying.
That's their justification.
Right. It's like, this is where things are getting interesting because we talked about this yesterday. Louisiana has advanced a bill that will make abortion homicide, that will legally list it as homicide. So this is a political line that is as hard as a line can be, because once that line is crossed, that means you have serious questions about whether or not someone is justified in using force to stop an abortion doctor from committing an abortion. If the act of abortion is homicide, then there's a legal justification to prevent that from happening. That's if it's codified. Regardless of the law, though, there are people who already believe that to be the case.
I thought the conversation you guys had down in Nashville, sort of theorizing about future technology that could potentially enable a fetus to live at a much earlier age. Like, that is a fascinating philosophical conversation that I think people just need to be willing to have, because that is what it puts it into context. It makes it less emotional.
Well, the fascinating thing is we had this conversation where I basically asked if there was a way that from the moment of conception, a baby could be taken from the womb and put into an artificial womb, a machine that would allow it to live, should we then ban abortion to the extent that the baby is killed and only allow procedures to terminate a pregnancy if the baby is allowed to survive? The issue with that, I suppose, is everyone on the right basically says like, oh, okay, that's an interesting question. Maybe separating from the mother might be bad. But I've asked a handful of people on the left and they say, meh, who cares? No, I don't know. Why not? Whatever. So not to get into a technological discussion, right. My question, I guess, is what I'm trying to get into is, are there issues we can't mend? Are there just ideas that we're never going to be able to rectify amongst each other?
I believe so. I mean, we can come close, but there are always going to be issues that will crop up. And then, you have what you just proposed there as a possible viable solution. But when you have things that are that extreme on the right, that extreme on the left, you're not going to change those people necessarily. But what you can do is uplift the middle. When you have that extreme polarization, then what you want to do is strengthen the middle, pull the middle up. And in doing so, you will pull some of those people on the left and some of those people on the right into the middle as you do that, sort of like a vortex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think have you heard the idea that socialism is able to exist within libertarianism, but libertarianism is not able to exist within socialism?
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty powerful idea. I mean, I don't necessarily know one way or the other if it's true, but it seems like a true fact. What do you guys think about that idea?
In a fully libertarian system, you have the right to create a socialized system with no problems. In a fully socialized system, you've got a lot of checks and balances you'd have to get through to create a system where you're like, I don't want to be a part of that. Unfortunately, you have to because you're already part of it. That's the idea of socialism.
No, absolutely. So one of the issues now in the whole Roe v. Wade debate, I tweeted about this earlier. We had Tim Ryan and we had Obama. I'm sorry, not Obama. We had Jen Psaki talking about Biden. I don't know why I said Obama. We had Jen Psaki talking about Biden refusing to condemn late-term abortions. She was asked, I think it was by Ducey over at Fox News, whether Biden was in favor of restrictions on abortions. And she just, hee-hawed around the answer and was like, it's between a woman and a doctor. Tim Ryan said the same thing. So for me, I've always been kind of in the center left position. It used to be the left liberal position in this country of like in the first trimester, maybe into the second and third trimester abortion are kind of just not okay. And it's supposed to be safe, legal, and rare. But now you have one side saying unrestricted up to 9 months. The woman is about to go into labor. The baby can be aborted. And then you have the right saying ban outright in every circumstance. So how do you find that middle? I mean, how do you, most people are now finding themselves like there's no middle. There's very few people left.
I think part of it, depends upon the circumstances as to why a particular woman wants an abortion. I'm not saying, I don't believe that all abortions should be illegal. I don't believe that all abortions should happen either. But I think it depends upon the circumstances. If a woman has been raped by a stranger, if a woman has been raped by her father, or it's a young girl, something like that, these are mitigating circumstances. It's already bad enough. A rape is bad enough that woman is going to remember that the rest of her life. Yeah. It's going to traumatize her. It's going to traumatize her even more if it's somebody within her own family, her father. Okay, and if that child is produced, she's going to be confronted with that child every day as a reminder. Is that something that we want? That might be a decision for her to make, and not for us to make.
I suppose the issue is, we've talked to a great deal this past week about all the abortion, but I think one way to kind of elevate the conversation is, what do you do when you have two competing political factions that have just moved away from each other?
Well, that's what Roe v. Wade is sort of bringing up in the cultural conversation is like, should local areas make that decision? I'm not,
it's almost like that's the solution then to repeal Roe v. Wade. I'm overturn it.
Yeah, it's just crazy how controversial it is and how emotional it is, but we have to have the conversation.
Here's what I think. I think that we mentioned this briefly the other day. If you look at the history of the United States and personhood, that we have a tendency to move towards granting more personhood rights than rescinding them. That in almost every circumstance, we are continually expanding who gets access to what we deem to be civil rights. It wasn't always the case in the United States with racism that people weren't granted full civil rights, with women not being able to vote. I actually think that based on the trends of this country, we're going to move towards completely banning abortion outright. That will come to a point where people agree that they're going to say we deem an unborn baby to be a human life, guaranteed constitutional protections.
What was it like before Roe v. Wade? Daryl, do you remember much about it?
Yes, but vaguely.
Was it like a big problem? Was abortion a hot topic? There wasn't social
media.
Yeah,
it was always a hot topic, and women were getting abortions in secret, doing it themselves with a coat hanger or having somebody else do it with a coat hanger. I remember friends of mine even did that, and then there were those who were very vocal about it. They would come out and say, "Yeah, I had an abortion. What about it?" Things like that. But it was always very controversial. And there were a ton of abortion clinics where you could go and get it done legally, and there were always, not I won't say always, but a number of times there would be protests out in front of the clinics.
It was particularly more violent back then, wasn't it?
In some cases, yeah. I mentioned the guy, I forgot what his name was Michael something, who went up and down the East Coast bombing the abortion clinics. That part was violent, and killing doctors who performed abortions. As in Dr. Gunn, but not everything was violent. There were a lot of loud vocal protests in front of some of these clinics.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.